The last one we did of this was live streamed, and it was just us guys just sat very, very far away from each other. We quite liked that one, didn't we?
You said that. I didn't say that. No. This is look. It was a time and a place. It was less daunting than looking out at everybody.
At Ted.
But it's good to it's good to see everybody here. It's excellent.
Simon, welcome from everybody here. This is your kind of first public appearance. How have you found those early days here at Stoke City?
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, I've had a really warm welcome from everyone. So, it's great to meet you all. And, thank you to all the staff for that warm welcome. Like anything, I've moved to the area. It's been a period of transition for me. And the 2 months on Monday I've been here for. And I would say it's definitely been a bit of a blur. But it's an absolutely fantastic football club. And my first impressions, couldn't be any more positive. So, really excited about the challenge ahead.
Brilliant. Well, we're absolutely delighted to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, the bad news is the bar is now closed until we're finished getting through your questions. If for those of me who quite regularly frequent the Waddington Suite, toilets are just to my right-hand side and your left-hand side of the room. So we have had questions after questions after questions in their droves through social media. So without further ado, Michael, our first couple, shall go to you. Let's get a bit of excitement ahead of the new season, which isn't too far away. Our first question, how would you describe the performances during pre-season, and do you think we're ready to mount a serious challenge in the Championship?
I think that if as I answered the question after the game on Saturday, we had a few concerns. I'm not going to sit here and say anything different. I think that we have had a good pre-season. We've brought a number of players into the club. A lot of players have left. It's a different makeup of the squad. The squad's the youngest that we've had, certainly in my time here. And we've had a few challenges in the games. But in terms of how pre-season has gone, in terms of how the team have trained and everything, we've been pleased with that aspect of it. I just think in some of the games we've looked a little bit flat at times. We've maybe not played well enough for long enough in games. And maybe the results were not what we were expecting. But if you're asking me, are we ready to play on Saturday? I firmly believe we are ready to play on Saturday. And that, the squad that we have, I think, is excited about the challenge. With younger players, I think you're always going to potentially get a little bit of inconsistency. But I think we've got the right types of players at the football club. I think they will need a strong backing as well, particularly, obviously, when we play here at home. But I think you'll find a real edge to the pre-season, obviously. And we've seen that this week with the players. And as I say, we look forward to the game on Saturday. Tactically,
what triggered the change from a 4-2-3-1 formation to the current 5-3-2, and will you be continuing with this system next season? Millwall aren't watching.
Well, first of all, we started last season with a back three, and we had, I think, a lot of really strong performances with the back three. Harry Suter getting injured at the time he did affected us quite badly, probably more so than we anticipated in terms of how we were able to play as a team. And then really in January, the signings that we made were geared to help us play more with the back four. And I think when we assess where we are as a team, I think we have to be flexible to play in both systems. We felt we were a little bit weak as fullbacks. The fullbacks that we had at the club were more suited to being wing backs, and I don't think that's any different now, to be honest. I think that we have Josh Timon has emerged as a really strong player for us. We've brought Harry Clark to the football club from Arsenal, who's had 2 loan periods where he's played very well on the right-hand side, whether it be as a right back or as a right wing back. And we've tried to put as much athleticism in the team as we can. That's what we felt when we look back over last season, when we got frustrated with games and we saw situations in games where the game tended to slip away from us, or we from a winning position we drew the game, or from a drawn position we lost the game. I think athleticism was a big part of that. And if you look around the Championship in general, if you look outside the 2 teams that got promoted automatically, the 4 other teams that were in the playoffs all played with a back three. So I think it is quite common for teams to play in the Championship with that system. But as I say, whatever we start with, whether it's a back three or a back four, we try to put a squad together that can play in either system.
All right, for the time being, thank you very, very much. So your first rest of the evening. John, let's... I do apologise. Let's set the lie of the land. Can you clarify the hierarchical structure of the footballing and non-footballing side for me, please?
Okay. Yep, sure. So obviously, Simon's joined us, which is great. In terms of Simon reports into myself and Richard Smith, and pretty much all the commercial side of the club would report into Simon. So whether that be media, conference and banqueting, commercial, also has a line in from community with Adrian, and ticketing, so it would all report into Simon. So then you've got the football side, whereby we've got what we call a technical board, which consists of Michael, Chris Laird, Andy Cousins and myself, and that would be that's kind of a structure that you see more and more in football. For example, that would mirror how Liverpool do things and various other clubs. Indeed, we've had a technical board meeting today, and that appears, to be working well, and we're pleased with that. And then we've got people who straddle both sides. So, for example, John Pelling on the finance side, and then, of course, Richard then is the group, the property side all comes into Richard. I don't think I've missed anything.
That'll do us.
Thank you.
I'm happy with that. Simon, we've heard a lot about how your role will begin to shape here at Stoke City, but what are your plans to bring in further investment into the football club?
Well, look, obviously, I'm taking this period of time at the moment to assess how we operate things currently and where we're successful and where we need to improve. I think it would be silly when we sort of answer that question. I'm not going to be looking too far outside our traditional revenue streams at the moment. Clearly, we've got a fantastic facility and a 30,000 seat stadium that I'd love to see full every weekend. And it's it's my job with the ticketing team to drive attendances as much as I can. Obviously, the retail operations, to continue to grow shirt sales and to drive profit into there. Whether it be sponsorship, we've got obviously a conference and events market, which was, as many, that in the hospitality industry was obliterated during COVID. That we're in that whole rebuild process at the moment. So. I feel that we've got to get our bread and butter absolutely right first. And once that I can look around and think, I think we're firing all cylinders in those areas and we're doing everything we can to grow the revenue streams within those more traditional areas of a football club, then potentially we can start looking outside that and be maybe a little bit more dynamic or a bit creative into other areas to bring in additional revenue. That's not to say that we won't keep an eye on everything that's going on, and if an opportunity should arise that we feel could benefit the club, then clearly that we're going to take that opportunity. But look, there's lots of work to do. As I say, we've got a fantastic foundation here, and I think probably people are a bit bored of me saying it, but I've worked at other football clubs before, but I've never been more convinced in my life the foundation that we've got at this football club from my perspective, to drive success off the pitch is all here. And that obviously you've seen the £6 million plus investment that goes on off the pitch that Richard Smith and the team have worked tirelessly to provide. I can guarantee there'll be no other Championship club doing that this summer. So from my point of view, I've got all the tools that I believe I need to drive success into the club, and couldn't be more grateful for that.
Well, this is from an admin for an American supporters Facebook page, Stoke City USA. What can be done to help support the thirst for English football in these growing markets? Something that we can all agree would drive much needed revenue back into the club and achieve its long-term goal of self-sufficiency.
I think firstly, it's amazing we've got these pockets of supporter clubs internationally, and that's absolutely brilliant to hear. I believe we've got a good following in Norway. We've obviously, I think that was from America. So that's brilliant. That's really positive. I think what we probably don't do, and I'll be maybe corrected by my staff after this, is that do we communicate and engage those guys to a level that they would probably see that they feel part of the football club, other than buying an overseas stream to watch a game or logging onto the website. So I've got to look more into that, and I feel that we should probably try and bring those guys closer, those supporter groups overseas. But I think it would be foolhardy of us at this point to think, Championship's a very domestic league in the UK, and the business and the revenue streams that you generate are very localized. So to think about going overseas and try and penetrate overseas markets to generate revenue, I think it would be a thankless task, really. And I think the amount of money and resource and manpower you'd have to put behind it, and to be honest with you, I don't think you get return on your investment. So, if you step up into the Premier League, those are the conversations that clearly you can have, and there probably is a stronger business case to look into that. So at the moment, as I said, I think it's very much we need to nail our local market, we need to engage supporters at a higher level and drive attendances and grow all the revenue streams that I just discussed. But those overseas supporters are clearly just as important to make sure that we make them feel part of the football club, and how we communicate with them, engage with them is really important, and we'll definitely look into that.
Don't forget as well, ladies and gentlemen, we are running the raffle this evening, so if you haven't already, Steve Hunty, give us a little wave over by the bar. Make sure you go over and purchase yourself a little strip of raffle tickets. We have a signed Stoke City home shirt that will be given away, as well as a signed football, as well as a family pass to the Blackpool game right here at the Bet365 Stadium. Michael, back to matters on the pitch. Last season, poor game management cost us over 20 points from winning positions. Moving forward, how can you and your coaching team ensure that this doesn't happen again this time around?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I know, obviously, how frustrated you guys were with that situation. Trust me, we're equally as frustrated by that situation. I think the biggest thing we've tried to do is find a different mentality within the players, with the players we've brought to the club as well. I think there was certain situations that were self-inflicted in games. I think at times we were unable to force home the advantage that we had. And possibly we've tried to add like an out-and-out goal scorer in our squad with Dwight Gale now coming to the club. I think if you look at the Championship, the games are always pretty tight. I always felt that in a lot of the games where we had the upper hand, we didn't force home our advantage enough, maybe not taking the chances that we'd created. So bringing Dwight to the club was a big factor in that. We're actively still looking to strengthen in that area of the pitch as well. And I think it comes from, it has to come from us as the staff. I think it has to come from a little bit of, unity within the club. So the supporter base, everyone is united in that to try and help the team in that situation. I think sometimes the lads, maybe some of the younger lads felt it difficult at times playing in games when the game was in the balance. But they have the experience of doing that now. I look at people, like I mentioned the likes of Josh Timon, for example, Jacob Brown. They've had 2 seasons now of consistent first-team football, so we would want to see that experience come through in key moments in games. I look at the squad we put together with Josh Laurent, Lewis Baker. We have an energy now in our team that I think will help us in terms of the age of the players, the athleticism of the players. And I think sometimes in last season we maybe finished with an older team on the pitch than what ideally we would have liked, and we've tried to address that this summer. But I think the key in the Championship is momentum and holding on to it when you get it. I think we had that in the early part of the season. We lost it around about probably December for a period of time, and then we had a difficult period sort of from the middle of January to the middle of March where our opportunity to be a top 6 team faded away. So we look back on all the games, we see the moments in the games. You're right, sometimes it's game management from how some of the games that we conceded. If I would name one, I look at the situation in the game here against Cardiff where we're 3-0 up, and it's poor game management, from the players to allow to lose a 3-goal lead in that space of time, and then you have the opportunity to go and win the game and you don't take it. So those are all things, experiences that hopefully the players will learn from. But we will have to show more resilience as a team this season to get to where obviously we believe we want to get to.
You mentioned one player in particular there, Lewis Baker, our new club captain.
Yes, Lewis will be the club captain. I think really when I look at the candidates, I think everyone knows that Harry Souttar is captain material, but obviously he's coming back from a serious injury, and he doesn't need the burden of obviously being the captain at that point in time as well. I think the important thing is to get Harry back, get him fit, playing. And I think Lewis has demonstrated that leadership since he's come to the club. Obviously he came in January and scored 8 goals and had a big impact, but more about how he is about the club on a daily basis and how he trains, how he prepares. He's a top professional, and hopefully that will obviously don't think we have an issue with that within the club, but hopefully the players see the importance of that. You know, Lewis is the first player in the training ground, the last player to leave. He does everything to make it to get to the top level. He's a real belief that, you know, he wants to get to the Premier League. And the other thing was with Lewis, we could have lost him in the summer, and he committed to sign a new 3-year contract. So that he believed in the club and he believed in what we're trying to do here. So I think, you know, he was a perfect candidate.
Simon, this is potentially a question that would reflect a variety of departments, both on and off the pitch. But since our relegation from the Premier League, that atmosphere around the Bet365 stadium has somewhat eroded. What plans do the club have to try to reignite the passion, loud, intimidating atmosphere that visiting teams used to dread facing here?
Well, that's obviously, that's a big job, because I remember that as a football fan watching from afar, and I think it was, you know, renowned around the country about the atmosphere that you had at its peak in the Premier League here, and it was the envy of everyone. So if we ever get back to that point, then I'll be a very happy man, that's for sure. I think I came to a game last season, and one of the things that I did identify, so I came as just a fan, you know, walked the concourses, had a beer, went into the stands, and just wanted to assess how the matchday operation looked from that side. And the one thing I did notice was that I felt there was, when you look at some clubs, there is a pocket of fans, a contingent of fans in a certain area of the ground that kind of are almost, it's their responsibility to generate some noise. I think at Crystal Palace, as you're watching from the TV to the left-hand side, I think they call them their ultras down in the corner, but there's about 2,000 fans down there. People talk to me about the Coventry section that they've got in the corner. I think Middlesbrough and Derby do it very well behind the goal. And what I noticed that I felt at Stoke is that we had quite a lot of pockets spread around the stadium. And I always found that's quite difficult to have that core fan base that want to make as much noise as they possibly can, which hopefully the rest of the crowd then feed off around the stadium. So I guess, look, if, you know, first step would be potentially to speak to, you know, the Supporters Council and the relevant fan groups to see if there's a way that we can consolidate 2, 3, 4, 5,000 fans into one area of the ground, they are the focal point for generating the initial atmosphere in the stadium, which hopefully the players feed off and the rest of the crowd feed off, and you go from there. Obviously, you know, ultimately getting back to those days in the Premier League is what we're aiming for. But you know, there's lots to assess in that area and how we can improve it. But as I say, as an observation, as a supporter who came to, I think it was a Sheffield United game, that's what I looked at, and I thought it was quite dispersed around the stadium. I think that's going to be very difficult to create that atmosphere that obviously we're all searching for. So it definitely will be about consultation with supporter groups, supporters council, about how we can collectively work together to try and bring that back.
In addition, would there therefore be any talks to perhaps bring in a safe standing area within any part of the ground?
That is a constant consideration. I think, look, ultimately where we've been, so I hope you can appreciate this summer, as I said, you know, all of the works that have gone on, all of the focus has been on that. I think there's 8,500 seats that have been changed in this stand. As you all know about the sports bar, over £2.5 million worth of refurbishment gone into there. And there's a number of other projects that the club has undertaken. So, as you can imagine, that is a huge amount of work. And as I said before, Richard Smith and his team working tirelessly to try and get this, you know, everything sorted for the start of the season, which will be. So that's been the absolute focus. But safe standing is absolutely a conversation we are having, and it is a consideration going forward to the future. And talking about atmosphere, again, will that be part of the conversation about how we can, you know, drive those supporters into a certain area of the ground to create that atmosphere that obviously we're all craving. So, yeah, there's no commitment to do it for me right here, right now, but obviously it needs to be in consultation with supporters and with the facilities team and Richard's team. So, but, you know, all I can commit to is that we will definitely be reviewing that over the course of the season.
So I'm just away from fans' questions for a moment. You seem incredibly well researched around similar stature-based clubs, similar football clubs, perhaps aspirational football clubs at times. Has that been a massive part of you taking on this role here at Stoke City to really grasp where we can be and what we can get to?
Well, look, the role itself was hugely attractive to me. You know, it was the next step in my career, which I felt I was ready for, and you know, I wanted to. You know, I think working for a really solid local ownership group is probably a hugely unique situation in English football at the moment. So So that was a hugely attractive proposition for me as well. I've worked in the sport for 15 years now, so hopefully I've picked up a number of things along the way. And I've done things well and I've done things badly over the time, and you learn, you make mistakes, and you learn from those, and the good things you take with you and you take on to the next job. So look, the opportunity to come here, the role itself, the club, as someone, as I said before, I talked about the atmosphere that was the envy of many clubs across the country. The club is, as someone from the outside looking in and who's not from the area, but the way this club operates is the envy of many clubs across the country, and I can assure you of that. And we've got absolutely fantastic facility. We've got a Championship stadium. We've got a Premier League stadium in the Championship. Sorry. So, there was many different areas that attracted to me to this job. But overall, I believe the challenge, the opportunity to take it forward from, and help be part of the process to get it back to its former glory that it was a number of years ago was something that I was never going to turn down.
John, this is now quite a broad question. What is the plan for the future? Before we got promoted to the Premier League, allegedly we had the 3-year plan, then the 5-year plan. When we got relegated, we were told lessons have been learned, and we've got a plan to get us back. 3 seasons later, and obviously that plan hasn't quite happened. What is that plan now when we sit here and talk about it today?
The plan is always to have as successful a football club as we possibly can have. Clearly there's so many aspects of the football club which we want to get right, and obviously Simon's come in, and we've got all the commercial side. Obviously you all know about what we've been doing with the academy, but ultimately we're all judged, and quite rightly so, on how we do as a first team. We want to be successful, and we'll do whatever there is in our power to get that success. Clearly, after 10 years in the Premier League, coming down, we finished, mid-table for all those seasons when we've been back in the Championship, and clearly that's below where we wanted to be. I can't pretend it's anything otherwise, and clearly I'm usually disappointed that that's been the case, and all I can tell you is that it's our absolute desire and focus to change that and to do better, and to mount a real challenge for the playoffs and try and have a successful season.
Michael, as John says there, we are often judged by what your team do on a Saturday. That solely falls down on your shoulders a lot of time. Yeah. When you sit down with your coaching staff ahead of this new campaign, you look at the positional strengths and the areas that we are strong, and you assess this squad. Do you think that it's a more defensive system rather than an attacking one?
No, I don't think so. I think that I hear a lot of comment on tactics and systems and everything, and you got many different opinions. But I think to play with 2 strikers, unless you play a basic 4-4-2, which very few teams play now, this is the system that lends itself to play with 2 strikers. We've looked and tried to bring a number of wide players to the club. If you think in recent times, the predominantly lone players coming into the club, and they've not really had the impact that we'd hoped. The young and talented players, but ultimately they maybe didn't have the impact that we'd hoped. And so you're always trying to find a solution, and we're under no illusions. We have to win more games. It's as simple as that. We're not sitting here thinking anything different as a coaching staff in terms of when we put a squad together. And so for me, the system, I think it depends on the attitude of who you play in the wide area. So, I talked about time, and we brought McCarran, who's a young player from Leeds. We brought Harry Clark. Okay, we've got young Tom Sparrow as a backup in that situation as well. So I think a lot of the system, will depend on how they play in the system. We don't play with a 5. The team should only ever be in a 5, and its defensive third. So there's a lot of responsibility on those wide players. And what we've worked hard on as well when we've played with a back 3 is the option to play 3-4-3, which means we're taking a midfield player out and we're playing with 2 wide players and a striker in that situation. But, as I touched on earlier, teams have been successful with that system in this league. In terms of teams who have gone up automatically, Sheffield United are probably the best example of that. And I think also you have to defend a lot. In the Championship, it's a different challenge from what the Premier League would be, where basically every team is pretty much a footballing team and different type of football. The Championship throws all sorts of different challenges at you. You go down to Birmingham and the game's about throw-ins, free kicks, corner kicks. The ball's not in play very much, so you have to build it. You have to build that resilience in your team as well. And we signed players that we felt could do that, and that was always a big thinking in playing with a back three. And I think, as a touch on, I think the players that we have are more comfortable, the centre backs in particular, in playing in a back three. What we need to do is we probably need to get more out of our front two, and then it will appear a much more attacking system than possibly what it has to date. But I look at where we were in terms of scoring goals. Other than the 2 top teams last season, there wasn't a huge difference, I don't think, between what we scored and some of the teams above us. But equally, as I say, we've put our focus and our resource into the top end of the pitch. That's where we're spending our money, because we believe that's where it will make the most difference.
We have had quite a busy summer. Talk us through what that recruitment process looks like and how has that changed during your time here at Stoke City?
Well, the recruitment process never stops, if I'm honest. It's not something that starts at the start of the pre-season and starts at the 1st of January. There's been quite an overhaul in the recruitment department since I came. We brought Alex Aldridge to the club last year. Alex left and went back to Millwall. So we have a different chief scout in. Andy Cousins is very close to that, managing that whole system with myself and with the technical board that John mentioned earlier. And basically, it's difficult. We're not in a massive market, so where we are in terms of what we're able to spend, the types of players that we're looking for, the types of players that we believe will help us, it's quite a narrow market, so quite a focused view on what we're able to do. And that's, I think, no different from a lot of Championship clubs at this minute in time. And but the process is very much, it's very detailed. We use, obviously, data. There's a lot of, obviously, scouts on the ground. There's a lot of video analysis as well. But the hardest thing is to get footballers into your football club. Too hard. It's harder to get them out as well sometimes. Trust me. But it's definitely. But it isn't easy to get them into the club. There's a lot goes into that. We have to sell them the club. I think when we get them to the point, the training ground, they see what this club's about. I think there's a genuine belief that this is a Premier League club setup, as Simon's touched on. But we have to sell them that this club can get to the Premier League as well. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and we have agents involved and everything. But I think our recruitment has been good, because one thing that I do think in the period that we've been here, the players that haven't worked out, they haven't cost us. We were able to sell them on. We weren't stuck with players. The loans, if they come and are successful, great. If they're not, it's a short-term measure. We don't. So I think, we've had to build the team in a different way from what we did previously. In the Premier League, you're building a team and you're spending money to stay in the Premier League. That's your sole objective. When you come into the Championship, you can spend money and then try to get back up. We didn't manage to do that. So we have to build the club in a slightly different way. It's very challenging at times. But equally, I think over time we'll feel more rewarded with the team on the pitch, that the real priority is, first of all, playing for Stoke City, and more importantly, that we don't have one player here financially and another player here, that we have a group of players that are here financially. And I think we're a long way to achieving that parity within the squad as well.
And then final one for you, just for a moment. Are we still looking? Are you still trying to add to the squad? And if so, profile, positionally? Talk to me.
Well, I tell John that I'm not looking, but yeah, I am still looking.
It never stops.
Yeah.
This is clearly the flaw with this technical board. So.
Yeah, earlier we said, of course we're looking. Yeah, we feel there's two positions that we need to strengthen, and we've discussed that openly. So, and we'll have to be patient for that, because we think that there are two players that can be key to at this point in time, we're not signing players to be part of our squad, we're signing them to be part of our team. So we were needing players that will come in, that we believe can come in and be part of our team. So we don't sign a Dwight Gale because we don't think that he won't play, and he won't play a lot of games. So we have to be patient for those players, because they'll have more options. If it's a loan situation, we'll have to be patient with the parent club. They will dictate that. So that's pretty much where we are at this minute in time. There's not a lot in the market from a free agent point of view that is overly attractive to us, and we've tried to stay away from situations where those types of players, and again, the free agents that we've brought to the club have been brought on contracts that we'll hope they'll make an impact and do well and stay on a longer term basis. If they don't, they won't hurt us on a longer term basis as well.
Well, John, how difficult has it been to invest into the club during the last cycle of P&S? Could you provide us with an update on where the club currently stand on these restrictions, how that limits our transfers, and what plans are in place to deal with them moving forward?
So I suppose I'll make a number of observations on the profit and sustainability rules, or P&S. It's no secret that we as a club think they are a deeply flawed set of rules. I mean, just to give you one example, you've got a situation where club relegated in their first year, so they'll receive an income of 44 million in parachute payments. That 44 million counts as revenue in the P&S system, right? Club not in receipt of parachute payments. Owners invest, say, 15 million into the club because in equity, non-refundable, in equity, for P&S purposes, that's not regarded as revenue. So it's a completely unfair playing field in terms of trying to compete with the parachute payment clubs. And that's just one example of the flaws of profit and sustainability. And I suppose what I would say is they are the rules that are in place at present. And we have worked incredibly hard to try and ensure that we remain within those rules. And at the same time, try and provide as large a budget as we can for Michael and his team to put out a competitive side for us to challenge, for the playoffs. My final observations on P&S would be the fan-led review found that they looked at all the systems of financial regulation and looked at P&S, looked at some other controls, and they indeed found them all deeply flawed and suggested a different model of financial regulation. In addition, UEFA have also looked at the old P&S rules and found them deeply flawed and come up with their own new rules. So I suppose my final observation would be that I believe change is coming. I believe there will be a new set of rules. What I can't tell you at the moment is exactly when that will be or exactly what form those rules will take. But as I say, we've worked very hard to work within the current rules, however flawed we may think they are. And, we have tried to ensure that working within those rules, that we provide Michael and his team with as strong a budget as we absolutely possibly can.
John, you've used the words playoffs on a couple of occasions so far tonight. My next question reads, where do you want us to finish? I assume that's top of the team, top of the league by quite some way.
Oh, wait, yes, of course, yeah.
But where are your expectations?
Look, I believe we can mount a strong push to be involved in the playoff conversation. That I think is a very realistic expectation. That's what I want to happen. We want to be in and around the playoffs.
Simon, John's talked a lot about investments on and off the pitch. The refurbishment of Delilah's looks fantastic. Are there any plans for a fan zone outside the stadium?
I know this is something that John spoke to me when as soon as I joined, really, and obviously it's a bit of discussion that had been happening with the Supporters Council, and it's something that obviously there's a clamour from the fans to get a fan zone. Located on the footprint of the stadium. It's something I've had experience for in the past, and it's something that I can assure you is very much at the top of my priority list to try and execute. It's going to take some time, because what we don't want to do, there's different degrees of fan zones, isn't there? What we don't want to do is put a few kiosks and a couple of bars and a bit of music and call that a fan zone and think we've ticked that box. We want to do it to a standard that we believe fans will be proud of, and that takes time. Obviously, there's a footprint out there. There's car parking spaces. There's, where the footfall goes around the stadium. We are in the planning stage, but I can assure fans that it's something that we are working on at the moment, and we will keep you updated as we go through the process. If and when it happens, I can't commit to that at the moment, because I said we've got to work with the operations team. We may even have to work with the local council, whatever it may look like. We've got to work through all of those challenges. But I know that at the end goal is that we've got to hopefully be able to deliver a fan zone that you will be proud of. So, please take it away from tonight that it's absolutely something we're working on.
Bless you, by the way. Brilliant. Just speaking from fans locally and around the club, I know that would be something that people would be very, very excited about if it did come to fruition. Is there an intention to use Delilah as a sports bar for fans on perhaps non-match days as well?
Well, we'd hope it's the go-to bar for any sporting occasion, really. I mean, we've got a World Cup coming up in November, and we'd hope all Stoke fans would that would be their first stop to watch all the England games, and there's opportunities for beanbacks. I know with the EFL, I know there's some rules around it for Stoke away games that maybe we'll either sell out our allocation or people can't get to on a midweek game. So we're looking at all of that. Look, we've spent, say, £2.5 million on the facility, and it looks an unbelievable facility, and we want our supporters to enjoy that as much as possible. And we'd like for them to call it, a home of sport for them and their first choice when something's on. So absolutely, we'll be looking at all opportunities to have those doors open.
Brilliant. So John, I know we've not even kicked off the current season, but what improvements will be made to the stadium and training ground next summer?
Okay, well, I'm going to answer that in some form. As we alluded to, we've got a very significant kind of 5-year plan, which will involve more than 20 million spent on the facilities. I can't. Obviously, we've spent more than 6 this year, this close season. With the seats, some washrooms to the concourses, the boardroom, the players' lounge, and most significantly, I think the new sports bar, which I think we're all pretty excited about. There's a lot to do over those 5 years. There's still a bit of scheduling as to when things are actually going to happen. So I'm not going to. I think Richard's going to speak more about that over the coming months about what might be happening next season. But all I can tell you is that we're very committed to, making this stadium and the training ground and the training facilities for Michael and his team absolutely as good as we possibly can.
Michael, as John rightly says there, we are blessed with fantastic facilities. I know the lads adore what we have down at Clayton Wood. But after such high hopes of reaching the playoffs, especially after such a positive winter transfer market last season, I know we've already discussed this with John, but where do you see a kind of basic requirement for this football club during this campaign?
We have to challenge to be in the top 6. To challenge to be in the top 6, you have to be in the top half. It's as simple as that. I think if you're in the top half, as we were for a lot of last season, then you can challenge to be in the playoffs. And then it's about that period, I think, maintaining momentum at that key moment in the season. But we've never changed that. The club is far more stable now than it was when I arrived in terms of the type of team that we have, the type of player that we have, and all of that type of thing is I think, in a much better place. But ultimately, the team has to do better. It has to challenge to be in the top 6. That's what you guys want in here. That's what you want out there, and you want to see a team that can challenge. And it's my responsibility to try and build that team, and that's obviously what we're trying to do. So I'm under no illusions at all that we need to be, on the front foot from the opening game of the season, and we need to be in that situation where we're consistently challenged to give ourselves a chance of promotion. Teams do it in different ways. Sometimes teams have come stronger in the second half of the season. You know, how Forest achieved it last year was incredible given the start that they had. But yeah, we have to make sure that what we see is what we got for parts of last season and even parts of the season before, we maintain it for longer so that we have the opportunity then to obviously, finish in a top 6 position. You
talk about Forest there, and it was quite the campaign, the way that happened. Is there ever a point during a season where you say, listen, this isn't going to be our year, and expectations do change, or is that hope there and ever wavering?
No, I think the hope always has to be there. I think the nature of the Championship is so, I think...
Did they not know we're busy? There we go. No.
Didn't agree with my answer, obviously. I think the key is... I've lost my train of thought a minute here. You talked about Forest. Yeah. What did you ask me? What was the question? Yeah.
Do you ever change expectations?
Oh no, change. No, of course, no, definitely not. Look, as I touched on, like when we came into the club, the expectation, let's survive. That was our first instinct, was survive, and then from there, I think we recognised that there was a process of change that we needed to go through the club. But we did it with the basis of trying to be in a situation where we could challenge for the playoffs. And I think that, that will not change. We aren't a football club that is in this league happy to be here. There's a lot of clubs like us. If you go to probably a room in Cardiff, there'll be 250 people. They'll feel the same way. The nature, there's a lot of clubs in our league who have dipped their toe in the Premier League over the last 5 to 10 years. You've had 10 years in the Premier League, so for a lot of you younger fans, you'll have seen most of your Stoke career will have been watching the team in the Premier League. For some of you older guys, that'll be a little bit different. You'll have watched the team come through League One and playing in the Championship and everything like that. So every fan has different individual expectations all the time. But as a club, the expectation is to try and find a way to get the club to the Premier League, and that'll never change. And we're totally aligned in that. John has never hidden that fact from me. I think when he brought me here, it was about make sure we stay in the Championship, and we've consistently tried to build going forward from there. We haven't built as quickly as I would like as a manager. There's been a few challenges in that. I'm not going to lie about that. But equally, we've never wavered from where that starting point of let's make sure we can try and get back to the Premier League.
Simon, ticket prices are something that is constantly discussed across the board to watch the likes of Michael's team play. Did we consider the Reading ticket offer on a £20 reciprocal deal or not?
Yeah, we did seriously consider it. We don't think we're overly enamoured by probably the way it was positioned by Reading on social media, but we did have a discussion with them, and there was 2 reasons why we didn't take it. One, because we didn't feel that our own supporters buying tickets, the match day pricing, sitting in a comparative seat, £6, £7, £8 more expensive than the Reading fans was fair on our own supporters. The other thing that we did suggest to them was to, we obviously made them aware of our free coach travel option, and we said, look, why don't they join us in offering free coach travel to their supporters to travel up to the Bet365, to which they declined. So look, what I will say, just because we didn't do that particular offer, we were always in conversations with the club. It's not to say we won't do, we won't take advantage of another opportunity should it rear its head, or should it become available. However, just the way that one was kind of presented publicly, and we just felt we declined that one. And as I say, we did give them the opportunity to reciprocate free coach travel. I think 6 clubs out of the 24 went with it in the end. And I think the other 18 clubs probably felt the same as us.
John, your attitude to ticket prices is for me something that should always be applauded. We do a lot for free away travel, as Simon rightly says, and I imagine that remains of utmost importance to yourself.
We've always been very conscious of ticket prices. We always want to make supporting Stoke City as affordable as possible. We're very aware of the pressures on people, especially at the present time with the price of the cost of living increases. And look, as long as we're at this football club, we will try and make watching Stoke City as affordable as possible, and we'll also try and make the team as successful as possible. Obviously, in the latter, we haven't quite succeeded as much as we'd want over recent years, but that is absolutely our desire.
Brilliant. What is the club's view of the recommendations of the fan-led review of football produced by Tracy Crouch MP and the government's response to it? And in particular, does the club endorse the EFL's support for an independent regulator of the professional game? Okay.
The fan-led review, Tracy Crouch's review of football, had one thing, it had a lot of recommendations, so it's a big document. I think there are around 140 recommendations in the review, but I suppose I would say that Tracy's review was very, very thorough. I'd also say it was a very independent review, which maybe isn't always the case. And Stoke City and ourselves would agree with, I'm not saying we'd agree with every single point in the review, but we agree with an awful lot of the review. So in particular, you asked about, do we support an independent regulator? Yes, we absolutely support an independent regulator, particularly one that's focused not just on the Premier League, but the whole football pyramid. And we would absolutely support that. And we would also absolutely support the review also looked at the financial regulatory model, and the review came up with the best approach being what they would call the prudential model, which is based, I won't bore you with it, but it's based on the Financial Conduct Authority methodology of making sure that companies are sustainable within that sector. And that very much looks at liquidity levels, equity levels. I can tell you're quite bored.
You lost me a long time ago.
Basically, it encourages good long-term investment, particularly through equity. It encourages competition, and it encourages sensible investment in football clubs,
which is something that we want to do and would benefit Stoke City.
I just think it is the right model for football, and clearly the fan-led review felt it was as well.
Michael, wrong idea for football, injuries. Bane of our life at times. How do you as a coaching staff have to plan for them? How do you react to them? And how on earth do you prepare for life with a number of injuries during a season?
Yeah, we do a lot of, there's a lot of stuff out there at the minute, that a lot of analysis on injuries, and players are managed more individually now than they've ever been. Like we have, players get injured predominantly unless it's a tackle, a contact injury. If it's a muscle injury, it's either because they're fatigued or because there's some type of weakness there. So it's about trying to almost look into the future and see that. And there's a lot of systems out there that promise that they do that. I'm not convinced that they do. But we've been hurt probably by, if you look at the injury, going back to even Joe, snapped his Achilles, and Tyrese had the really bad knee injury. Then Harry has the knee injury. Nick Powell had a catalogue of injuries last season as well. All things that I believe hurt the team quite badly. And we've had an injury already this pre-season already. Nick Powell obviously in a tackle in the opening game 4 weeks ago against Leeds. damaged his knee ligament. Not to the extent, it's a different injury from what Harry had, but he's still going to possibly be another 4 to 6 weeks away from being available. So that all of that comes into when you put your squad together, and we felt that we tried to sign. Part of our thinking was that with the players that we brought in, that they would be at an age where they were robust, that they would be able to play more, they would be available to play more. There was a bit of flexibility in them, so that they could play in different positions if required to do that, based on what we may or may not have available, and the biggest thing is also the management of the players. We have so much data on the players. We get every training session, all of the data. It's very important that we don't overload them with training that leads them more to injury as well. So there's a number of things in there. But for example, when we had the situation with Nick Powell, it was pretty evident that we were probably going to have to do something else in the market, which is why we brought, obviously, Will Smallbone to the club, because we felt he wasn't an expensive option to bring to the club. Similar type of player, young, keen to prove himself. So we compensated by doing something else in that way. We took Phil Jagielka, for example, on a 6-month contract on the basis that we know that Harry, it's not to say that Phil Jagielka won't stay longer than that, but that Harry would be back and playing and at his best by that time, because we just can't carry 35 players and pay them and just on the basis that they're there if we need them. And obviously we've pushed through a number of younger players as well, and there's a number of younger players around the squad. Whether they're ready to play yet, time will tell. But I look at young Tom Sparrow's come in and taking the chance, Connor Taylor's come in and taking the chance, young Tez, Gale and Griffiths have trained with the first team as well. So I think we have younger players who have been through our academy around the team more than we've ever had. And that's one way of trying to combat, obviously, the injury situation that I think every team encounters at some point in the season.
What is the development plan for those players that you've just discussed there? I mean, I spoke to Tom at our photo shoot day the other day, and he was extremely excited about the potential opportunity that he may face this season. But we have the likes of Emre, Jack Griffiths. Will they be in and around the first team squad on a daily basis, and will they potentially be options on a match day?
Well, they have been already in and around the first team on a training basis at the minute. I think for me that's where they improve the most, is when they train with the first team. Young Griffiths and Tez Gale are extremely young, extremely gifted, but extremely young as well. So we have to be sensible with how that pathway looks. Tom Sparrow is a really good example, because he probably wasn't what we saw as the one that would come through from that age group of players, but he was the one that when we brought him up to train with the first team did himself the most justice. It was almost like, I'm not going back down to train with the 23s. So every time he came up, he trained extremely well, and then he took that forward and he's got his chance and he's played. Now he still has to force his way into the team, but he's taken the first step, and now that he's a daily player, he's with the first team all the time, he's grown in confidence. So we'll have a decision to make on Tom at some point. Do we feel that a loan will work for him, or will a loan not work for him? And loans are very, very, they're hit or miss for when you send young players out. Good example, we had two young players, Eddie Jones and Connor Taylor last year. Eddie Jones went out to Hartlepool, and it wasn't a particularly successful loan. You lose control of the player in that period as well. Connor Taylor went to Bristol Rovers. In the first 3 games Connor Taylor was at Bristol Rovers, he couldn't even make the matchday squad. He wasn't in the 18. And he got his head down, he trained and he played. And speaking to Joey Barton about it, and then he got in their team and he stayed in his team. And now he's come back to us. He's a totally different player from the player that left us 12 months ago. So there's no set pathway for them. I would be very wary with Tez, Gale and Griffiths because of the types of player they are. You would like to think that they can come through and be in your first team through the pathway that you build internally. The gap, it's bridging the gap between under-23 football, which isn't under-23 football. That's just a label. It's essentially under-19 football, really. And then how do we bridge the gap to get them to play in the Championship? Because it is a tough league to come in and play as a young player in it. And that's always the challenge. And I think, we've done fairly well with that. Not every player will take that step through. And I think that, the ones who go on loan, it doesn't work for them. It makes it more difficult when they come back to the club. Harry's a perfect example of a player that had to go out on loan. Harry spent 2 years away at a club between Ross County and Fleetwood to come back. Nathan Collins didn't need a loan. Nathan Collins came through and played, and obviously after 20 games we were able to sell him for a considerable amount of money. So there's no set pathway for them, but the most important thing is that they're around the first team, and then from that we can assess what's the next step for them.
John, Michael's discussed there a number of young players coming through, in particular over the past couple of seasons. How pleased are you with receiving Category 1 status once more?
Clearly very, very pleased. And also, if you actually read the report, it was excellent. And it's an absolute credit to Gareth Owen and the whole kind of academy team that the report we got, and maintaining that status for a long period. I suppose I'd make another observation. I think it's, as I said, an enormous credit to everybody involved in the academy. What I would say is it's enormous credit as well to Michael and his team in terms of this has been, out of all my time involved at the club, this has been the closest I've ever seen the academy and the first team. And that's a really, really important point, because players coming through, to have a successful academy and to produce players, clearly it's essential that the academy is absolutely spot on. But those players then have to see a pathway. Yeah, they have to believe they're going to play. Yeah, or have a chance, or give the opportunity, having a chance of playing. And what you see now is that constant dialogue between Michael's team, Rory, Dean, etc., and all the academy staff. Well, who do you need today? What type of player? And then the academy guys putting forward players. Have you had a look at him? And you see those players, and when I don't want to dwell on particular players, but I will just dwell on one. When Emre, was clearly, there was a lot of interest in Emre, and when we were sat down with Emre and trying to convince him, that Stoke City was the place that he should remain, what I think one of the things that really sold it to him was he saw that pathway here. He knew that he was going to be given opportunities, and when I've been down and I watched the game the other day, and seeing Emre playing and seeing Jack, who's actually signed his contract today. It's really good to see. So that gives me a really positive view of the future.
Is that something that does give you a great sense of pride? I mean, Michael mentioned Colo now going to Wolves. Is that something that fills you with that joy to say that we are doing great things here, we are producing players?
I just think I've always loved, I realise not all of them are from the local area, etc., but I've always loved watching players who've come through our youth ranks, now academy, etc., them playing for the club. That gives me, clearly when I see that gives me a great deal of pride. And you also have that absolute will, you're willing those players to do really well, because you've seen them grow up through the club. Yeah, and so look, you'll always just have that additional pride when those things go well.
Michael, one player who has left the club this week, Will Forrester.
Yeah.
What was the thought process behind that one?
Well, I think Will epitomises the vulnerability of a young player at that age. Last pre-season, Will he got quite a bad injury against Hibs. We played here behind closed doors, and he was going to be out for a considerable time. We felt at that time that Will could be he could be possibly a fifth choice, sixth choice centre back, and push him closer to the team. So we had to do something in the transfer market, and then which we brought in a loan player, and Will then went out on loan. It wasn't a particularly successful loan because he got injured again, and so a very fractured season for him. Obviously, he played at West Bromwich Albion, and he got some first-team football before the end of the season, which was a big thing for him. But the reality was, well, he wouldn't sign a longer-term contract with the club. We offered him a longer-term deal. We felt that we could build a pathway for him, but he felt that his pathway was to go and play. So with that being the case, we felt that the best option was, we didn't try to push him in any direction. And I think the other situation was that Connor Taylor, as a young centre-back playing in the same position, had signed a long-term 3-year contract with the club and had shown up, I think, in pre-season that he was ahead of Will. So obviously, I think we had 2 young players like that. One had loan, had taken him to there, and the other lad had stagnated a little bit. And with the contract situation, I think it made sense to keep. Will was 21 years of age now. I think he needs to go and play league football for his own career. And we felt we had enough cover in that position. We've also got a young Irish lad, David Akagbu, in the 23s, who's a very promising young centre-back as well. And sometimes for some young lads, it's you have to be fair to them as well and allow them the chance to go and progress their career. And that was the decision.
Simon, unfortunately, due to stadium refurbishments, we haven't been able to have a public home game during pre-season. With an expected programme of further stadium refurbishments over the next couple of years, is that something that's going to stop us having fans in here for a pre-season game or not?
I hope not. No, absolutely not. If the opportunity's there, look, I did this year. There was so much work going on this summer, so we weren't able to put on a pre-season friendly. But again, I'll be working very closely with Richard Smith. My job is to try and, as I said, drive as much revenue, but create opportunities for additional events outside of football to also bring in those additional revenue streams. And what I've got to do is work hard with Richard, and it's not just bringing events in for events' sake, but use those windows of opportunity, because there'll still be work here next summer that needs to be done, but there will be windows of which we can hopefully secure something that will excite people of the local area. And having worked in stadiums for a long time, and it's about finding the right event for the right return. I mean, there's a lot of events you can put on during the summer, concerts, etc., that you put a huge amount of work in, and it literally can take over 9 months of your life, but doesn't really return you anything. And maybe it didn't really tick enough boxes in the local community either, and it wasn't as a desirable event as you thought it might be. So my job is to try and find something that excites you all, but also can obviously create a good, strong return to the business as well, to make us obviously stronger off the pitch, and there's the financial rewards there to invest either for Michael or for into continue to improve the infrastructure. So no, absolutely, we are looking at windows for next summer for what opportunities may lay ahead. So hopefully it was just this year that we were completely excluded from doing so.
Well, you'll be delighted to know I've got just one more question for yourself. What was the reason behind the decision to return to a paid-for programme this time?
The decision was, we got approached by our programme provider, who had a certain type of business model which enabled it to be like a free edition programme that we could provide to fans. And there was obviously advertising revenue that they were generating off the back of that, and it was a unique model, and fair play to them. It was it was a creative idea, and they came to us with it, and obviously we took them up on that. Unfortunately, it didn't that model wasn't a success for them, so they weren't able to allow us to continue to produce the programme for free. So look, we're obviously assessing the programme, as is every club at the moment, and we've returned to a paid for. It's going to be £3. So we've tried to keep it as affordable as we possibly can, and we're going to continue to review the value which the supporters hold the programme in, and whether we go to we do look at there's so much content that is being put through our digital channels. Do we switch to that or not? But we'll have to review what programme sales are that there are this season, and what the desire is for a programme going forward. But for one more season, we'll definitely have it for a paid for programme at £3. It wasn't a decision that we wanted to have to take, but unfortunately that decision effectively got taken out of our hands, because, as I say, that business model that was being executed by a third party was no longer offered to us.
John, last question. Given the recent success of the women's national team, the Lionesses have done phenomenally well. The final is, of course, this weekend. Do you have any plans for the Stoke team to turn professional?
So We have got plans for the women's team, so we've more than doubled the budget for the women's team this year. We're also making improvements to the structure and the running of that team. I don't think that's quite turning professional yet, but it'll be a big step forward for them, and then let's see how it develops from there.
Brilliant. Michael, not quite. Last question. Heading into Saturday, what type of test will Millwall bring?
Look, I think everyone knows. Look, no one looks forward to going to Millwall, really, do they? But that's just the nature. Yeah, it'll be that kind of game. Personally, I think going the first game of the season is a good thing. You know, we went there. I think it was 2 seasons ago. We drew the game 0-8. Felt we were very hard done by. I think Jacob should have had a penalty right at the end. So yeah, it's a tough game. You know, we lost there last season from a winning position, which was very frustrating. We beat them, I think, quite comfortably out here. We played well that day. We know what type of game it will be. We will have to be ready to fight and battle and do that side of the game as well. But we will have to play as well. So the players know that. And you know, I think they've not had a huge transition in their squad, and so they've obviously brought some new players in. They've lost some players who were very important to them, particularly Jed Wallace. So, but they'll be competitive, and obviously we'll have to match that.
Dean has praised the amount of crosses from wide areas. How do we go about making the most of those balls into the box when we wouldn't necessarily have that out-and-out target man in our ranks?
Yeah, I think, look, Dean, I think, made that comment after possibly the Bristol Rovers game. I think the crosses that go in the box don't necessarily have to, you know, Man City put a lot of crosses in the box. There's someone in the 6-yard box to tap it in. I think what we have to work hard on, we worked hard with the strikers, is the runs into the box. You know, I think we've got to be careful if you become, you know, it's interesting. We felt when we played West Bromwich Albion, for example, and they had Andy Carroll in their team, they were very one-dimensional. That was, and if you sign a player like that, it's difficult not to play like that. So, you know, we don't want to play like that. We want to play with energy and pace, and we want to get down the sides of teams. I think with Jacob and Dwight and Tyrese, that's their game. It suits them better to do that. We have to get more midfield players in the box. And that's been probably the most frustrating thing. I think, you know, we see a lot of balls going across the box. We saw that last season as well. And you kind of asking questions why no one's there to finish it off. And hence, obviously, why we're still looking at that area of the team as well.
See, you tried to be clever earlier. Tried to keep those positions out of it. I will say this now, finally. Before we do finish, what is the message to the Stoke City faithful ahead of the new season getting underway?
Yeah, public message. I think what I will say is, if I can give you any kind of steer, because I'm conscious that, you know, I talk a lot about financial fair play and all these, you'll hear me talking about, but I only do that because that's what journalists ask me about, okay? So I don't make statements about it. I generally get asked about these types of things. And then, so what do we need? Okay, we haven't given you enough. Okay, so we're under no illusions with that. We work harder, as hard now or as at any point that we've done since we came to the club. Okay, I'm fully aware that you're not singing about me drinking whiskey and Guinness anymore. Okay, which is I've come to terms with that. It hurt for a while, but I've come to terms with that. Okay, so. This can be a brilliant football club if you stick behind the team. I'm not in this job for adulation. I'm in it to build a successful football team, and you are a massive, massive part of that. Massive part of it. So the atmosphere in the stadium, you know, particularly the younger players, can we be as supportive as possible? I understand the frustrations because you've been now in this league. This is year 5. You didn't expect to be here, but we are, and the only way we can get out of this is obviously if we stay together.
Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, Simon King, Michael O'Neill and John Coates. Guys,